We live in a world that worships wealth, but hidden beneath the glitter is a truth few dare to face. The deeper you chase riches, the more you discover that every reward it promises carries a silent cost. Comfort breeds emptiness. Power invites isolation. Freedom disguises itself as new chains. Today we're diving into the paradoxes of wealth, the haunting realities that unfold once you step beyond survival and into abundance. Why does more never feel like enough? Why does every luxury slowly hollow out the soul? If you've ever felt like success was supposed to make you feel full, but instead left you chasing shadows, you're not alone. Let's unravel the hidden traps that wealth sets for the human heart, and why the true cost of getting everything you want might just be losing everything that matters. The richer you become, the more imprisoned you are by what you own. The pursuit of wealth is often sold as the pursuit of freedom. Yet paradoxically, the very assets that are meant to liberate the individual often become invisible chains. The more possessions you accumulate, houses, cars, businesses, reputations, the more you must guard, maintain, and defend them. What starts as an aspiration for a better life quietly morphs into an elaborate web of obligations. The mind, instead of breathing freely, begins to orbit endlessly around the things it fears losing. Imagine a man who starts with nothing but ambition. He lives in a modest apartment, walks to work, and dreams of financial independence. Over years of relentless work, he succeeds. He buys a large estate, luxury vehicles, a collection of rare art. But with each new acquisition comes unseen burdens: mortgages, insurance, maintenance, security, taxes. He now spends his days managing lawyers, accountants, caretakers, and advisors, all to preserve the empire he once naively thought would set him free. His movements become restricted not by lack but by excess. He cannot move cities easily without uprooting vast operations. He cannot trust easily without suspicion. He cannot even rest easily, for he is constantly alert to threats to his fortune: market crashes, betrayals, lawsuits, scandals. Jean-Jacques Rousseau warned that the more things we own, the more chains we put on ourselves. The rich man does not sleep better than the poor. He simply has more to lose. Even simple pleasures are corrupted. A quiet walk is no longer anonymous, but an event surrounded by bodyguards. A conversation is no longer innocent, but potentially a hidden transaction. Love becomes suspect. Friendships feel conditional. Everything must now be evaluated through the lens of protection and preservation. There is a brutal irony here. The poor man who envies the rich man's life might unknowingly be freer than him. True freedom, as the Stoics believed, lies in mastery over one's desires, not in their endless fulfillment. The richer you become, the more your identity can be swallowed by the things you own, until you are no longer a man with possessions, but a possession yourself, carried along by fear, pride, and endless responsibility. Wealth builds walls, first to keep danger out, then to keep yourself in. In chasing ownership of the world, you risk forfeiting ownership of your soul. The pursuit of wealth often costs you the very life you were trying to enrich. The dream of wealth begins innocently enough, a desire for a fuller, freer, richer life. We imagine that with more money, we will travel more, spend more time with family, explore passions, and savor existence. But as the pursuit intensifies, it mutates. What began as a means to a better life becomes an end in itself. Days stretch into endless cycles of work, negotiation, stress, and sacrifice. The vibrant life we sought is quietly postponed, traded piece by piece for a number on a screen, for milestones that, once reached, only move further away. Picture the young woman who enters the corporate world fueled by ambition. She tells herself she will work hard for 10 years, then live freely. Yet each promotion brings new expectations: Each raise brings new expenses. She moves into a larger apartment, buys a more expensive car, networks with people she barely likes, all to maintain a standard that was supposed to be temporary. Vacations are shortened, family gatherings are missed, creativity withers under deadlines. The rich, meaningful life she intended to create slowly vanishes, replaced by a treadmill she can no longer step off without consequence. Fyodor Dostoevsky once wrote, "The mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for." In the blind pursuit of wealth, many forget this. Life becomes a task to be optimized rather than an experience to be lived. Relationships are neglected, passions abandoned, health deteriorated, all rationalized by the belief that someday it will be different. But someday never arrives. By the time the wealth is sufficient, the vitality, the youth, the relationships that wealth was meant to serve have eroded beyond repair. In a cruel twist, the pursuit of wealth often demands the very sacrifices that make life worth living: spontaneity, intimacy, leisure, contemplation. A man may gain the ability to buy any meal in the world, but lose his ability to taste it. A woman may be able to visit any country, but feel no wonder left in her heart. The vibrant colors of life fade into grays of obligation and exhaustion. In the end, the grave does not distinguish between the millionaire and the beggar. Both leave behind the same silent question: was it worth it? Money amplifies your flaws faster than it solves your problems. It is a comfortable illusion to believe that money is a remedy for human weakness, that somehow, once wealth is acquired, impatience becomes patience, insecurity transforms into confidence, loneliness disappears into connection. But money does not fundamentally alter the soul. It merely removes the barriers that once kept certain tendencies in check. Without the friction of necessity, a person's true nature, both noble and grotesque, comes rushing to the surface. Money acts not as a healer but as an accelerant. Imagine a man with a deep craving for validation. When poor, his need is restrained by the simple urgency of survival. He must focus on work, shelter, and food. But as wealth accumulates, the need for validation finds fertile ground to grow unchecked. He buys status symbols, surrounds himself with flatterers, builds empires of attention. Instead of curing his insecurity, his wealth merely arms it, giving it a louder microphone, a larger stage. What was once a quiet, aching flaw becomes a towering spectacle. History offers endless examples. Consider the tragic downfall of lottery winners. Studies show that many end up bankrupt, divorced, isolated, or even dead within a few years. Their sudden access to wealth exposes every unchecked impulse, recklessness, addiction, impulsivity, and magnifies them until they consume their lives. As the ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus warned, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Without mastering oneself first, riches only feed the inner chaos. Wealth can solve logistical problems, debts, logistics, material scarcity, but the deeper existential wounds of the human heart are immune to financial remedies. A bitter man becomes a tyrant, a fearful woman becomes paranoid, a restless soul becomes addicted to more houses, more lovers, more experiences, none of which ever soothe the original ache. Instead of bringing peace, money magnifies the very dissatisfaction it was supposed to silence. In the end, money exposes you to yourself without mercy. It is a mirror polished so brightly that every crack in your character becomes glaring. The person you become after wealth is not a new creation, but the raw truth that poverty once shielded from the world. And if that truth is ugly, no amount of gold can cover it. Riches may change your surroundings, but they cannot save you from yourself. Freedom is often promised by wealth, Yet true freedom demands detachment. The promise of wealth is inseparable from the promise of freedom. The freedom to travel, to choose, to command one's time, to shape one's destiny without constraint. It is a powerful illusion, one that drives countless lives into tireless pursuit. Yet beneath the surface, a cruel paradox lurks. The more wealth you acquire, the more your life becomes intertwined with its maintenance, its defense, and its expansion. True freedom, the freedom of the soul, requires not ownership but detachment, not accumulation, but the ability to walk away. Imagine a man who dreams of financial independence. He imagines early retirement, luxurious travel, spontaneous living. Over decades, he built his fortune. But now his identity is tied to his businesses, his properties, his image. Every decision is weighed against the potential threat to his assets. He cannot disappear without consequence. He cannot act without calculation. His wealth has granted him choices but stripped him of lightness. In truth, he is no longer free, he is entangled. The Stoics, especially Epictetus, warned against this very trap. Epictetus, once a slave, taught that real freedom comes from mastery over desires, not from external possessions. He said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Freedom rooted in possessions is always conditional, always fragile, because what can be given can be taken. And fear of loss is just another form of bondage. Modern examples echo this timeless wisdom. Celebrities, billionaires, public figures, many confess that with riches came surveillance, lawsuits, exploitation, and the paralyzing fear of public failure. Their wealth buys privacy, but also loneliness, opportunities, but also distrust. The more they possess, the more their world shrinks into cautious, manicured spaces. Freedom, they realize too late, is not a commodity. It cannot be purchased, only cultivated by a mind willing to hold the world loosely, not cling to it with desperate fists. Thus, the man who needs nothing is freer than the man who owns everything. True freedom is the courage to lose, to walk away from possessions, titles, securities without the inner world collapsing. Wealth can decorate your prison, even expand it to a gilded mansion, but it remains a prison if your peace is held hostage by what you own. In the end, the freest soul is not the one who has it all, but the one who can let it all go. Wealth attracts admiration but breeds isolation. Wealth by its nature casts a long shadow. It draws eyes filled with admiration, envy, hope, and calculation. People are irresistibly drawn to those who possess it, projecting fantasies of power, success, and happiness onto them. Yet beneath this glow of attention lies a darker truth. The more wealth you possess, the harder it becomes to distinguish genuine connection from opportunism. In the realm of the rich, admiration often wears a mask and trust becomes a rare, almost impossible luxury. Imagine the self-made entrepreneur who rises from obscurity. In the beginning, friendships are forged in struggle, alliances built on mutual dreams. But as success arrives, the texture of his relationships changes. Compliments multiply, laughter becomes louder but somehow less sincere. Every interaction carries the faint, inescapable suspicion. Are they here for me or for what I can offer? Invitations, partnerships, even declarations of love are now shadowed by the unspoken presence of his fortune. Loneliness sets in, not because there are fewer people around, but because their intentions become harder to trust. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once observed, "It is difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else." Wealth makes this truth even more brutal. External validation surges, awards, applause, recognition, but inner certainty crumbles. Friends may hesitate to speak hard truths. Family dynamics twist under the weight of unspoken expectations. Romantic relationships too grow suspect. Is it affection or ambition? Is it companionship or comfort? Examples of this are everywhere. Celebrities living in sprawling mansions surrounded by dozens yet feeling utterly alone. Billionaires expressing nostalgia for the simpler days when friendships were unconditional. Even in philanthropy, cynicism follows. Are donations acts of generosity or public relations maneuvers? The wealthy become mirrors reflecting the desires of others, and rarely, if ever, are they seen simply as themselves. In the end, wealth attracts not only admiration but a distortion of reality. It draws people in, but not necessarily toward the truth of who you are. It creates a world saturated with faces, yet barren of true intimacy. To walk the path of great wealth is often to live surrounded yet unseen, praised yet unloved, celebrated yet profoundly alone. The richer you get, the more you fear losing what made you rich. The first steps toward wealth are often fueled by boldness, the willingness to risk, to sacrifice, to move against fear. Yet ironically, once wealth is attained, that same spirit begins to wither under the growing fear of loss. The richer you become, the more protective you grow over the mechanisms that built your fortune, your creativity, your courage, your reputation, your network. Each success tightens the grip of anxiety. What was once a tool for growth becomes a relic to defend. Picture an entrepreneur who built a thriving business through innovation and daring. In the beginning, he welcomed uncertainty, made rapid decisions, and took leaps of faith. But once his wealth swelled, once he became a figure of stature, he hesitated. Every new venture felt like a potential threat to the empire he had constructed. He became slower, more cautious, paralyzed by the thought of making the wrong move. The vitality that birthed his success is slowly suffocated by the fear of its own demise. This phenomenon is echoed by Niccolò Machiavelli, who warned that fortune favors the bold but often abandons those who cling to safety. In The Prince, he writes, "It is better to be adventurous than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and if you wish to keep her under, you must beat and bully her." Wealth often tricks its holder into believing that preservation is more important than creation, that defense is nobler than attack. Yet this clinging mentality seeds stagnation, and stagnation invites decline. Examples abound. Artists whose first works shocked the world later retreat into safer, more palatable projects to protect their fame. Investors who built empires on aggressive strategies slowly shift to hyper-conservative postures, losing the edge that once set them apart. Companies that were once disruptors become bureaucratic fortresses, terrified of cannibalizing their own legacy. What made them rich, risk, reinvention, resilience, is buried beneath layers of fear. In the end, the richer you get, the more haunted you become by the very energy that once empowered you. Wealth does not simply protect, it calcifies. It teaches you to clutch rather than to build, to fear rather than to create, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, you become a custodian of a fading past rather than a pioneer of a living future. The chains that wealth was supposed to break become the ones you forge yourself. Poverty humiliates the body, wealth humiliates the soul. Poverty strips the body of dignity in visible, brutal ways. It exposes a person to hunger, cold, disease, and helplessness. It is a public humiliation, one that can be seen in ragged clothes, hollow faces, and desperate hands. Poverty reduces a human being to survival, often forcing them into postures of begging, pleading, or enduring indifference from those who pass by. In poverty, the body's needs shout so loudly that the higher aspirations of the spirit, beauty, art, reflection, often fall silent. Yet wealth brings a more hidden and insidious kind of humiliation. The humiliation of the soul. It is not visible on the surface. In fact, from the outside, it often looks like glory, fame, luxury, comfort. But deep within, the soul begins to rot in ways harder to detect. Wealth tempts a person to betray their values for convenience, to lose their sincerity in favor of influence, to replace inner convictions with external appearances. Where poverty humbles the body through lack, wealth humbles the spirit through excess. Take, for example, the artist who once created out of pure passion, raw and untouched by commercial demands. As wealth and fame accumulate, the temptations grow, to please the audience rather than the soul, to produce what sells rather than what matters. Little by little, the fire that once animated their work is replaced by calculation. Their soul is not destroyed in one dramatic fall, but eroded over countless small compromises, each one justified, each one seemingly harmless, until one day they realize they no longer recognize the person they once were. Friedrich Nietzsche warned that whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. Wealth often makes this battle invisible. It convinces you that you are winning even as you are surrendering. It feeds pride, vanity, and self-deception until the soul, bloated with comfort and flattery, loses the sharpness and hunger that once made it truly alive. Thus, poverty and wealth both offer humiliations, but of very different kinds. One is loud, physical, and shamed by the world. The other is silent, spiritual, and often praised by the world. To escape poverty is a noble pursuit, but to escape the spiritual decay of wealth demands even greater vigilance. For it is far easier to notice when the body is starving than to realize when the soul has already died. You climb the mountain of wealth only to realize the peak is barren. The journey toward wealth is often imagined as a noble ascent, a climb filled with purpose, struggle, and eventual triumph. Each step upward is motivated by dreams of abundance, security, admiration, fulfillment, even immortality. We picture the summit as a lush paradise where every hunger is satisfied, every wound healed, but the brutal truth reveals itself only to those who reach the top. The peak is barren. It is cold, empty, and desolate, offering a stunning view but little else to nourish the soul. Consider the ambitious entrepreneur who sacrifices youth, relationships, health, and peace of mind to build a fortune. Decades are consumed by sleepless nights, strategic battles, and relentless striving. When he finally stands atop his mountain of achievements, he finds no warmth there. The crowds below admire him, but they are distant. The victories that once felt sweet now taste hollow. The price of the climb becomes clear, the irreversible loss of what was most alive in him. Philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau once wrote, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." The pursuit of wealth promises freedom, but often binds the soul to an endless cycle of more possessions, more status, more validation. And when the summit is finally reached, the realization dawns. There is no enough waiting there. No moment when the heart, exhausted from longing, suddenly finds peace. The peak offers a view of all you conquered, but it cannot give back what you sacrificed to get there. This tragedy plays out again and again. Celebrities who win awards speak openly of post-success depression. Titans of industry, after reaching their financial goals, confess to feelings of aimlessness and despair. Some seek distraction in hedonism, others in new, equally endless quests for power or legacy. Anything to avoid facing the silence that greets them at the top. The silence that asks, "Was this all?" In the end, the mountain of wealth is a mirage built on promises it cannot keep. It lures climbers with visions of ultimate fulfillment, but offers at the summit only the cold wind and the distant echoes of everything they left behind. True riches, it turns out, are found not in reaching the top, but in how you lived as you climbed, and in what you refused to sacrifice along the way. The more you chase money, the less you recognize yourself. The pursuit of money begins innocently enough, a desire for stability, comfort, and opportunity. But over time, as ambition hardens into obsession, something far more precious than time or health is sacrificed: the clarity of self. The faster you run toward wealth, the more blurred your reflection becomes. The person you once were, with dreams untainted by calculation, with values unswayed by profit, slowly fades into someone unrecognizable, molded by the relentless demands of the chase. Imagine the young idealist who starts a small business to share something meaningful with the world. In the beginning, every choice aligns with a set of principles: honesty, authenticity, passion. But as competition grows and profits beckon, compromises slip in, first small, then larger. Partnerships are formed not based on trust, but on advantage. Products are marketed not for truth, but for manipulation. The original mission is slowly replaced by a cold, utilitarian mindset: whatever brings more. Looking in the mirror years later, the founder struggles to remember why they began at all. Søren Kierkegaard captured this spiritual erosion when he wrote, "The greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if it were nothing at all." The chase for money often masks this loss under the illusion of progress. Each promotion, each deal closed, each financial milestone reached seems to confirm success, even as the soul grows more estranged from its original hopes. It is a theft so gradual, so disguised as achievement, that by the time you notice, there is little of the original self left to reclaim. This phenomenon is evident everywhere. Artists who once spoke truth now create what sells. Politicians who once championed justice become pawns of corporate interests. Even ordinary people, chasing higher salaries and larger homes, find themselves trapped in lives they no longer choose consciously, defined by mortgages, appearances, and the silent terror of starting over. They wear the mask of success, but beneath it, they mourn a self they abandoned somewhere along the road. In the end, chasing money without restraint is not merely about gaining wealth. It is about losing something far rarer. Wealth can be measured, flaunted, and protected. But the self, once lost to endless ambition, is far harder to retrieve, and no amount of money can buy back the quiet, honest soul that set out on the journey in the first place. Riches can decorate your life, but cannot fill its emptiness. Wealth has an extraordinary power to transform the surface of life. It can wrap existence in beauty, in art, architecture, fine clothing, and exotic destinations. It can smooth over discomfort, hide imperfections, and create the illusion of wholeness. But beneath the polished floors and glittering chandeliers, the essential emptiness of life remains untouched. Riches can adorn the exterior, but they cannot nourish the hollow spaces within the human soul. Imagine a man who achieves immense financial success. His home is a masterpiece of design. His vacations are to the most exclusive corners of the world. His dinners are events of exquisite taste. Yet when he returns home, when the parties end and the applause fades, he finds himself haunted by a gnawing void, a sense of futility that no luxury can mask. His wealth has built walls of gold around him, but inside the chambers are still cold and echoing. Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Riches make the room more comfortable, more dazzling, even more intoxicating. But they do not teach the heart how to be at peace with itself. They offer distraction, not fulfillment. When inner meaning is absent, no amount of luxury can compensate. The soul, deprived of real nourishment, will suffer in silence, no matter how opulent its surroundings. This paradox can be seen vividly in the lives of the ultra-wealthy. Despite access to every pleasure imaginable, rates of depression, addiction, and existential despair run high among those who seem to have it all. Celebrities overdose in mansions. Moguls confess to feeling empty after achieving everything they ever dreamed of. They decorate their loneliness with elegance, but it remains loneliness all the same. They polish their despair until it shines, but despair remains. In the end, riches are nothing more than a beautiful disguise for the deeper struggles of the human condition. They can build palaces, but not a home in the heart. They can buy admiration, but not understanding. They can create spectacle, but not meaning. True fulfillment does not come from adding more layers of beauty to life's surface, but from tending to the unseen, neglected spaces within. The ones money can never touch. The world respects your wealth, not your wisdom. In a world driven by appearances, wealth is the loudest language spoken. It commands attention, admiration, and envy, often drowning out deeper virtues like wisdom, character, and insight. No matter how profound a person's understanding of life may be, it is the display of wealth that captures the collective gaze. Wisdom whispers, but wealth shouts, and the world tends to listen only to the loudest voices. Consider the scholar who has dedicated his life to understanding human nature, history, or ethics. His insights could heal wounds, mend societies, and offer guidance in chaotic times. Yet he sits quietly in a modest home, unknown and uncelebrated, while a wealthy entrepreneur with little knowledge of anything beyond business is given a platform to speak on every subject under the sun. The world mistakes riches for credibility, as if financial success were proof of superiority in all things. This phenomenon was recognized even by ancient philosophers. Socrates lived in poverty, yet was among the wisest men of his age. He warned that the unexamined life is not worth living, but few cared to hear such difficult truths. Had he been wealthy, perhaps his voice would have echoed louder in his own time. Instead, history remembers him, but his contemporaries largely ignored, mocked, or condemned him. Money buys the illusion of wisdom, while actual wisdom often goes unnoticed, or worse, dismissed as irrelevant. The modern world offers countless examples. Celebrities and billionaires are asked for their opinions on complex issues far outside their expertise, their words treated as gospel simply because of their bank accounts. Meanwhile, the thinkers, the philosophers, the quiet observers of life labor in obscurity. Their wisdom could transform lives, but it is wealth that dictates who gets heard and who is forgotten. In the end, the tragedy is not that wealth brings respect, it is that wisdom alone does not. The soul's highest achievements, clarity, compassion, understanding, remain invisible to a society obsessed with tangible trophies. And so the wise must often walk a lonely road, offering gold from their minds and hearts, while the world clamors for glittering stones that merely shine. Recognition is reserved not for those who see clearly, but for those who dazzle. And in such a world, true wisdom must be content with being its own reward. To own much is to be owned by much. Ownership is often seen as a symbol of power, autonomy, and success. Yet the more a person owns, the more their life becomes entangled with the responsibility, maintenance, and anxiety of possession. What begins as an expansion of freedom slowly mutates into a tightening of invisible chains. The objects we acquire to serve us soon demand that we serve them. In seeking to master the material world, we risk becoming its most faithful servants. Imagine the man who dreams of a sprawling mansion, luxury cars, fine art, and rare collectibles. Each purchase brings a momentary thrill, a fleeting sense of triumph. But with every new acquisition comes an unspoken burden. The mansion requires endless upkeep, the cars must be maintained and secured, the art needs protection and insurance. His days become cluttered with decisions about management, his nights haunted by fears of loss, theft, or decline. What once seemed like symbols of freedom now dictate the rhythms of his life. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." He understood that the true cost of ownership is not merely financial, but spiritual. Every object we claim draws a thread between us and itself, a thread that tugs subtly but constantly. The more threads we weave, the less freedom we possess. We become caretakers of our possessions rather than caretakers of our own souls. Examples of this truth are everywhere. The collector who cannot travel for fear of leaving treasures unattended. The entrepreneur who builds a business empire only to find himself imprisoned by endless obligations. The celebrity who cannot step outside without an entourage to guard their fortune and image. Their riches have not liberated them. They have multiplied their dependencies. Ultimately, to own much is to live under the unrelenting pressure of preservation. Every possession is a silent contract demanding vigilance, energy, and worry. The paradox lies in how ownership, celebrated as the peak of success, so often brings a life of hidden servitude. True liberation, it turns out, does not come from surrounding oneself with more, but from needing less, from letting go of the belief that what we have defines who we are. Only then can we step lightly through the world, unburdened and free. Getting rich is praised, wanting nothing is feared. Society celebrates the pursuit of wealth with an almost religious fervor. The one who climbs the ladder, who hungers for more and attains it, is held up as a model of success, ambition, and greatness. Yet the one who genuinely wants nothing, who has transcended the restless craving for more, is often viewed with suspicion, pity, or even fear. In a world built on endless desire, contentment is seen not as wisdom, but as a kind of dangerous rebellion. Picture two individuals. One is a rising executive, tirelessly working long hours, celebrated by peers and showered with admiration. His ambition is seen as a virtue, his insatiable drive a symbol of life itself. The other is a quiet man who lives simply, uninterested in accumulating wealth beyond his basic needs. He is met with confusion. Why doesn't he want more? What is wrong with him? In a culture addicted to striving, the absence of want appears unnatural, even threatening. The ancient philosopher Diogenes understood this truth well. Living in poverty by choice, he famously declared, "He has the most who is most content with the least." Diogenes was mocked and scorned in his time, not because he failed to achieve, but because he rejected the very premise that achievement was necessary. His freedom from desire unsettled those who were imprisoned by it, a mirror reflecting their own endless hunger. Modern life continues this pattern. Entrepreneurs who amass fortunes are lionized, studied, and emulated. Meanwhile, monks, hermits, or even ordinary people who seek a simple, detached existence are often marginalized. The machine of consumption cannot tolerate those who no longer wish to feed it. To want nothing is to step outside the game entirely, and in doing so, to expose the game's hollowness. In the end, the paradox is devastatingly clear. The world bows before those who master accumulation, yet recoils from those who master themselves. The richer you become, the more you are seen as a hero. The freer you become from desire, the more you are seen as lost or broken. In such a world, true peace is not celebrated. It is feared, because it reveals that everything we are chasing might never have been needed at all. The rich live longer but experience fewer moments worth remembering. We are often told that wealth leads to a longer, more comfortable life. Access to the best healthcare, superior nutrition, and the ability to avoid life's harshest trials are all benefits that the rich enjoy. Yet in this pursuit of longevity, something is tragically lost: the essence of life itself. The rich may extend their years, but they often find those years empty of the very experiences that give life meaning. While they may live longer, they experience fewer moments that make life worth remembering. Consider the billionaire who, by all conventional measures, has everything: a vast mansion, private jets, a constant stream of luxury, and a network of influential connections. Yet, when asked about his life, he struggles to recall any truly joyful, fulfilling moments. His days are filled with meetings, deals, and maintaining the empire he has built, a routine that consumes him without leaving room for spontaneity, adventure, or true connection. His wealth, rather than enriching his experience, has enslaved him to the very system he thought would bring him freedom. On the other hand, consider someone who has little wealth but immense richness in experience, a traveler, an artist, or a person who finds joy in simple moments. They may not live as long in a physical sense, but the quality of their life, the depth of their memories, and the richness of their relationships are far greater. They have moments worth remembering, sunsets shared with loved ones, long walks through unknown cities, intimate conversations under the stars. These moments, though fleeting, resonate far more deeply than the fleeting pleasures of wealth. The philosopher Henry David Thoreau once wrote, "As you simplify your life, the laws of the universe will be simpler." The rich often complicate their lives with layers of luxury and responsibilities, creating a reality where the simple joys, the small unscripted moments that make life truly valuable, become increasingly rare. Time is spent preserving wealth, not living it. In the end, it's not the length of our lives that defines their value, but the depth of our experiences. The rich may have more years, but it is the moments of true connection, of simple joy, and of profound insight that form the fabric of a life well lived. The tragedy is that, in their quest to accumulate more, many miss out on what truly makes life worth living. The rich may live longer, but they often fail to live more deeply. Money creates options but destroys desires. At first glance, the acquisition of wealth appears to be a gateway to freedom. Money, in its purest form, can open doors to a multitude of experiences, opportunities, and possibilities. It grants the freedom to choose, to live where you want, to travel at will, to indulge in luxuries without hesitation. However, the paradox lies in the fact that while money creates a wide array of options, it simultaneously erodes the very desires that make life meaningful. When everything is attainable, the hunger for anything at all fades. Imagine a young artist living on a modest income, working late into the night, pouring passion into every brushstroke. Their financial limitations inspire creativity, pushing them to find joy in the simplest of things, to seek fulfillment in the act itself, not the outcome. The desire for recognition, success, or material gain burns brightly, fueling their ambition. Yet, as they accumulate wealth, the urgency of this desire starts to diminish. The artist now has the financial freedom to live without worry, but what once inspired their work, the hunger, the yearning for a better life, begins to dissipate. The options available to them have become so numerous, the need to push boundaries, to create with intention, has faded into complacency. In the same vein, we can observe how money's influence dulls the sharp edges of human desire. When a person has access to everything they could want, a mansion, an extravagant lifestyle, the finest foods, what remains to strive for? Money removes hunger, and with it, the drive to improve, to evolve, or to experience life with passion. As the philosopher Bertrand Russell once noted, wealth is not of the same nature as health or love. The richer one is, the more difficult it becomes to find a lasting and significant enjoyment. The reality is that as we are given more choices, our desires become fragmented, diluted by the sheer volume of options. Indecision often follows as the clarity of purpose once driven by scarcity becomes clouded by excess. The more we can buy, the less we feel we need. In this world of abundance, our longings transform into a vague emptiness where nothing seems to hold the same allure it once did. Money in all its promise does not make us content. It simply makes us less hungry. Thus, while money undeniably creates freedom, it also robs us of the fundamental spark that makes life worth living. The desire to pursue, to chase, and to yearn for something greater than ourselves. It is in the pursuit, not the attainment, that our deepest satisfactions lie. Wealth can buy anything except the willingness to enjoy it. Wealth provides the means to acquire the finest things life has to offer, from luxurious homes and rare experiences to exotic vacations and gourmet meals. Yet despite all of these possessions and pleasures, there is one thing money cannot purchase: the ability to truly enjoy them, the willingness to savor the moment, to embrace joy, and to appreciate life's blessings often eludes those who have too much. Wealth can fill a life with abundance, but it cannot guarantee fulfillment. Take, for instance, the story of the billionaire who, after amassing a fortune, embarks on one lavish vacation after another. He stays in the finest resorts, eats at Michelin-starred restaurants, and visits the most exclusive locations. On the surface, he should be the picture of contentment, but beneath the surface, there is restlessness. He is never fully present in any experience, always distracted by work, the next acquisition, or a distant goal. His wealth has made life a series of transactional moments, each more extravagant than the last, but none bringing the true satisfaction he seeks. The irony is that the more he has, the less he enjoys. This paradox is not confined to the ultra-wealthy. Many people, upon reaching financial security or even affluence, realize that material comforts no longer bring the happiness they once imagined. They can buy a new car, a bigger house, the latest gadget, but the excitement fades faster each time. There is a certain point where novelty wears off and the joy of new possessions becomes fleeting. The rush of acquisition is brief and the emptiness soon creeps in again. Wealth in this sense becomes a cycle of fleeting highs, leaving the individual perpetually chasing the next thing, never truly savoring the moment. The philosopher Alain de Botton spoke of this in his exploration of the human condition, stating, "We live in a world where the pleasures of possession and consumption are all too readily available, but where the actual enjoyment of these pleasures is a rare and often elusive thing. Money does not guarantee peace of mind, nor does it ensure that we are able to experience life with gratitude or joy. Ultimately, the willingness to enjoy life is an internal condition, one that cannot be bought, bartered, or acquired. It requires presence, contentment, and an ability to appreciate what is rather than constantly seeking more. The richest life is not one filled with material wealth, but one in which we can embrace the simple moments, savor what we have, and find deep satisfaction in what is already before us. Money can fill the world with luxury, but it cannot fill the heart with the ability to enjoy it. The wealthier you are, the less authentic your relationships become. As wealth increases, the complexity of relationships grows. The very nature of abundance begins to warp the interactions between individuals. While wealth brings with it opportunities for connection and influence, it often distances people from one another in ways that make relationships less authentic. The more money you have, the more likely your relationships will be influenced by ulterior motives, whether it's the desire for status, favor, or material gain. What begins as genuine connection often turns into a transactional exchange, as those around you may begin to view you not for who you are, but for what you possess. Consider a wealthy individual who has achieved a high level of success. Friends and acquaintances surround them, often because of their position or financial resources. At first, they may appear as genuine friends, offering companionship and shared experiences. However, as time passes, these relationships can become clouded by hidden agendas. Some might be motivated by the opportunity to get closer to their wealth, while others may flatter or ingratiate themselves in hopes of gaining something tangible. The wealthy person, in turn, becomes unsure of others' true intentions, unable to distinguish between genuine affection and opportunism. The warmth and spontaneity of a real friendship give way to a more calculated and guarded dynamic where trust becomes difficult to maintain. For instance, a billionaire could throw lavish parties with influential people, surrounded by people who praise them, but how many of these people are truly invested in the individual's well-being? How many of them would offer a hand during a time of personal crisis? The fear of being used can often overshadow the enjoyment of human connection, leading the wealthy individual to retreat or limit their relationships to only those who seem safe, those who have something to offer or seem unthreatened by their wealth. This situation mirrors the famous observations of the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, who explored the concept of bad faith. He argued that individuals often mask their true selves and act inauthentically in social settings, and wealth compounds this phenomenon. When you have resources, the lines between who you are and who people think you are often blur, leaving you isolated in a sea of artificial connections. The reality is that the more wealth you possess, the more difficult it becomes to cultivate meaningful, untainted relationships. The rich live in a world of admiration and envy, but these emotions, while flattering, are not the foundation of true connection. In such an environment, genuine love and friendship become rare commodities, often replaced by hollow exchanges. The result is a life surrounded by people, yet profoundly lonely. True authenticity in relationships becomes a luxury that wealth cannot buy. Money can protect you from hardship but exposes you to despair. Money has the power to shield you from the brutal forces of hardship, the kind that can break a person physically, emotionally, or psychologically. It provides a buffer against poverty, poor health, and social alienation. With wealth, the immediate struggles of life become more manageable, allowing for comfort, security, and a degree of control over circumstances. But beneath this protective layer, wealth can also expose a person to a far deeper, more insidious form of suffering: despair. Take, for example, the individual who is born into poverty and struggles for basic necessities. The constant fear of not being able to make ends meet, of losing housing or food security. For this person, the acquisition of wealth is a literal lifeline, a way to free themselves from the torment of survival. Once they amass enough money, they may find themselves no longer bound by the chains of poverty, able to afford medical care, live in comfort, and have their basic needs met. However, the protection wealth offers comes with a hidden cost. With the basic struggles of life removed, the wealthy individual may face an existential void. The realization that their material success has not cured their deeper emotional or psychological wounds. Without hardship to drive them, their purpose fades, and they may be left with an overwhelming sense of emptiness. The very wealth that once offered solace becomes a cage of isolation, where joy and fulfillment are increasingly elusive. Consider the wealthy businessman who, after years of striving, finds himself at the top of his career. He can afford everything he ever wanted, but the joy of accomplishment begins to dissipate as he is confronted with the meaninglessness of his success. Despite his financial security, he feels disconnected, unable to find satisfaction in the luxuries he once coveted. The problems that once fueled his ambition are no longer there to keep him going, and he struggles to find new meaning in his life. This is the despair that wealth can bring. The despair born from the realization that material wealth does not in fact bring happiness or a sense of purpose. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer captured this paradox, writing that wealth is like a cushion that is able to soften the blow of hardship, but leaves you vulnerable to the deeper, more pervasive suffering of existence. Money may protect us from physical suffering, but it often exposes the darker, existential truths of human life that wealth cannot shield us from our inner turmoil, loneliness, or search for meaning. In many ways, wealth replaces the tangible struggles of survival with the more painful, intangible struggles of the soul. The absence of hardship exposes the stark reality that fulfillment and peace do not lie in wealth, but in the deeper, unmeasurable aspects of life. You can purchase experiences but not meaning. Money has the unique ability to offer access to experiences, travel, luxury, indulgence, and entertainment, all of which can fill life with moments of pleasure and excitement. With wealth, the ability to purchase adventure, opulence, and thrill seems limitless. Yet, as much as money can afford you an abundance of experiences, it cannot provide the one thing that many of these experiences are meant to fulfill: meaning. Consider a person who uses their wealth to travel the world, visiting exotic locations and attending exclusive events. They accumulate a collection of impressive experiences, skydiving in New Zealand, dining at world-renowned restaurants, and attending the most prestigious galas. While these experiences may be thrilling in the moment, the meaning derived from them is often fleeting. When the rush of novelty fades, what remains? The souvenirs and photos are tangible reminders, but they cannot fill the deeper void of existential significance that most seek. The excitement fades into routine, and with it, the feeling that life lacks deeper purpose. These experiences, while valuable in themselves, ultimately fail to provide lasting meaning if they are not grounded in personal growth, connection, or purpose. Take, for example, the person who throws themselves into work, acquiring wealth that allows them to live an extraordinary life. They may have access to the best restaurants, the most exclusive vacations, and all the luxuries money can buy. Yet the more they accumulate, the more they realize that these experiences, while enjoyable, leave them feeling empty. They were searching for fulfillment, but what they found were distractions. The key is that while these experiences are fleetingly enjoyable, they fail to answer the deeper questions of life. How many people who have traveled the world feel a sense of meaning or fulfillment once the thrill of their latest adventure has passed? In his work, existentialist philosopher Viktor Frankl argued that meaning in life does not come from external accomplishments or possessions, but from one's inner purpose and the ability to find significance even in suffering. Frankl's personal experience in Nazi concentration camps reinforced his belief that people can endure unimaginable hardship if they find meaning in their suffering. His words, "Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how," reflect the profound truth that experiences alone, no matter how luxurious, do not impart meaning. Only a deeper understanding of oneself and One's place in the world can do that. Wealth can purchase adventure, comfort, and luxury, but it cannot provide the deeper fulfillment that comes from living a meaningful life. The pursuit of meaning is not something you can buy. It is something you must discover within yourself, often through struggles, personal growth, and relationships. Money can afford you a series of experiences, but true meaning comes only through engagement with life on a deeper, more reflective level. The paradox is that while wealth may lead to a life filled with experiences, it is the meaning, the thing we all search for, that remains just beyond the reach of materialism. Amassing riches often begins with ambition and ends in paranoia. The journey toward wealth often starts with a single, powerful force: ambition. The drive to improve one's circumstances, to attain financial freedom, and to achieve personal success is a common motivator. It begins innocently, with a vision of bettering one's life and securing a more comfortable, stable future. However, as the pursuit of wealth intensifies and accumulates, something shifts. The initial excitement of ambition transforms into an ever-growing sense of paranoia, fear, and insecurity. The very riches that were once the symbol of success become the catalyst for anxiety and dread. Consider the entrepreneur who starts a small business with the hope of creating a better life. Their ambition drives them to work tirelessly, sacrifice relationships, and take risks to see their business grow. As they amass wealth and their company becomes successful, they experience a sense of achievement. However, over time, they begin to worry constantly. What if I lose it all? What if someone outperforms me? Their initial dreams of stability and comfort slowly turn into an obsession with maintaining their success, which leads to the creeping fear that everything could be taken away at any moment. They become preoccupied with the competition, watching their wealth erode in their mind with every market fluctuation, every rumor, every threat to their position. What was once a symbol of accomplishment becomes a prison of fear. This shift from ambition to paranoia is not limited to business owners or entrepreneurs. The wealthy individual who started their journey with aspirations of a better life may, upon reaching their financial goals, find themselves plagued with insecurity. They fear being betrayed, losing their wealth, or becoming irrelevant. The more they possess, the more they begin to doubt the motives of those around them, questioning whether people truly care for them or simply want access to their resources. Relationships become tainted by suspicion, and trust becomes increasingly difficult to find. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche explored this idea in his works, noting how the pursuit of power often leads not to satisfaction, but to anxiety. Nietzsche wrote, "He who fights with the monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." The more one becomes consumed with the desire for wealth and power, the more one risks losing their sense of self in the process. Paranoia takes root, and the individual finds themselves trapped in an endless cycle of worry and fear. The paradox is clear. The very ambition that drives individuals to amass riches is often the same force that transforms their lives into a psychological battle. The desire for financial security morphs into a pervasive fear of losing it all, stripping away the joy of success and replacing it with the burden of paranoia. What was once a dream of freedom becomes a constant, gnawing concern. In the end, the pursuit of wealth leaves behind not the peace one hoped for, but the constant dread of its fragility. You earn wealth to control your life, but life refuses to be controlled. Wealth is often pursued with the promise of control, the idea that money can provide freedom from the uncertainties and struggles of life. The more wealth you accumulate, the more you feel equipped to steer the course of your life in the direction you desire. It's a seductive notion, money as a tool to shape your world, to eliminate worry, and to eliminate the chaos of life. Yet, as many discover, money, as powerful as it is, cannot control the fundamental, uncontrollable forces of existence. The paradox is that, despite your best efforts to gain control through wealth, life continually defies those expectations. Imagine an individual who has spent years working tirelessly to build wealth. They save, invest, and plan meticulously, all with the goal of achieving a life of control. They believe that with enough money, they will be able to dictate their schedule, their health, and their environment. At first, they succeed. They acquire a luxurious home, travel the world, and enjoy the finer things in life. Their life, once dominated by financial strain, becomes a picture of autonomy and ease. However, despite their ability to control their material world, life itself begins to intrude in ways they did not anticipate. Health problems, family crises, unexpected losses, these are the forces that no amount of wealth can control. The wealthy person may have the best doctors, the best insurance, and the best resources, but they cannot prevent the inevitable march of time or the sudden, unpredictable events that life throws at them. No amount of money can keep loved ones safe from tragedy or guard against the relentless nature of aging. In these moments, the facade of control shatters, and the individual is reminded that life, in all its chaos and unpredictability, cannot be tamed or owned, no matter how much wealth one possesses. The philosopher Albert Camus, in his essay The Myth of Sisyphus, describes the human condition as one where we strive for meaning, control, and order in a universe that is indifferent to our efforts. Camus argues that, like Sisyphus pushing his boulder up the mountain, we are constantly striving, working, and seeking to shape our existence, only to be met with the unyielding nature of the world. Despite our best efforts, life often refuses to follow the script we envision. The reality is that wealth, as powerful as it is, cannot buy control over the unpredictable nature of life. It can provide comfort, security, and choice, but it cannot eliminate the inevitability of the unknown. Life's twists and turns will always challenge the notion that we can control it, and often it is in our inability to control it that we find the deepest truths about our existence. Wealth can smooth the edges, but it can never grant dominion over the forces that shape us. Wealth promises immortality but hastens spiritual death. The pursuit of wealth is often seen as a way to transcend the limitations of human life. Money, after all, can buy time in many forms. It can extend comfort, security, and even opportunities that seem to extend the bounds of life itself. Through wealth, one can access the best healthcare, luxury, and the ability to delay the effects of aging. It holds the illusion of immortality, a promise that through acquisition, one can escape the fragility of human existence. But in reality, wealth does not lead to immortality. It accelerates a kind of spiritual death, where the pursuit of material wealth consumes the very essence of what makes life meaningful. Take, for example, the billionaire who invests endless time and energy into amassing wealth. They build empires, accumulate resources, and become figures of great influence. On the surface, their wealth offers them a sense of power that seems to defy the limitations of human mortality. They live longer, healthier lives than most, surrounded by luxury and luxury alone. Yet, as their wealth grows, so too does their detachment from the things that truly nourish the soul: connection, love, purpose, and self-awareness. They find themselves isolated in a world where money has created a divide between themselves and others. Their relationships become transactional, their sense of fulfillment linked only to their financial success. Over time, the very wealth they believe will grant them immortality begins to rob them of their humanity. Wealth, in its pursuit, often leads people away from the things that give life its true depth. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre believed that the pursuit of material possessions can be a form of bad faith, a way of distracting oneself from the existential questions of life. Instead of confronting the realities of existence, the inevitability of death, the search for meaning, and the human need for connection, individuals use wealth to cover up these fundamental truths. The richer one becomes, the more they fill their lives with distractions and superficial pleasures, replacing inner peace with a constant pursuit of more. The promise of immortality that wealth seems to offer is thus a false one. While it may prolong the life of the body, it accelerates the death of the spirit. True immortality comes not through the accumulation of wealth, but through the cultivation of inner peace, relationships, and the pursuit of a purpose greater than oneself. As long as wealth is viewed as the key to immortality, it will remain a hollow goal, one that leads to a spiritual emptiness that no amount of money can fill. In the end, the greatest tragedy of wealth is not that it cannot preserve the body forever, but that it often kills the soul long before physical death comes. The rich are envied until they are pitied. At the outset, wealth brings admiration. The rich are often revered for their success, their ability to obtain what others cannot, and the luxury they seem to effortlessly enjoy. People envy them, covet their possessions, and aspire to attain the same level of material success. But as time passes and the public gaze lingers longer, something shifts. The very attributes that once earned admiration, wealth, power, and influence, begin to stir discomfort, suspicion, and ultimately pity. The rich, once the objects of desire, become the subjects of empathy, seen less as enviable figures and more as tragic ones. Consider a tech mogul who made billions through a groundbreaking startup. In the early stages, they are idolized, their wealth an inspiration to aspiring entrepreneurs. People envy their success, dreaming of living the lifestyle they see broadcasted through the media. But as the years pass, something begins to change. Their personal life begins to unravel. They are estranged from family, isolated by the very wealth that once promised them freedom. They are unable to trust those around them, fearing that relationships are motivated by financial interest rather than genuine affection. Their health deteriorates under the constant stress of maintaining their empire. The very wealth that made them admired now becomes a burden that isolates them from the world they once seemed to command. The change is subtle but profound. As the rich grow more distant from others, the envy they once inspired turns to pity. People no longer see them as the embodiment of success, but as figures trapped by their own fortune, unable to enjoy the simpler, more meaningful pleasures of life. Wealth, which was meant to provide them with control and satisfaction, has instead bound them to a world of pressure, suspicion, and loneliness. This shift from envy to pity highlights the limitations of wealth in fulfilling the human need for connection, purpose, and peace of mind. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believed that wealth could never satisfy the deeper needs of the human soul, as it only magnified the desires that could never be fully quenched. He argued that the pursuit of wealth often leads to a cycle of dissatisfaction, as it brings with it a host of problems, stress, isolation, and a loss of genuine human connection. In the end, the rich are envied only until their wealth becomes a reflection of their struggles rather than their triumphs. The very things that once seemed to elevate them now serve to isolate and burden them, leading to a place where others no longer see them as objects of aspiration, but as figures deserving of pity. They are, in a sense, trapped by the very thing that once made them powerful. Wealth, instead of being the ultimate prize, becomes a prison of its own making. Success intoxicates, Wealth anesthetizes. Success is often seen as the pinnacle of human achievement. It is the heady rush of victory, the high of accomplishing goals, and the euphoria of proving oneself capable. Success intoxicates the mind, filling it with a sense of limitless potential. It motivates, energizes, and pushes individuals to pursue even greater heights. In contrast, wealth, while it may promise security and comfort, often numbs the spirit. It creates a sense of detachment, a dulling of desires and purpose. While success stimulates growth and ambition, wealth can sedate the very drive that led to its accumulation. Consider the case of a high-powered executive who has climbed the corporate ladder to the very top. The initial stages of their career were filled with challenges, breakthroughs, and the intoxicating taste of success. With every promotion, every milestone, they were driven by a powerful force, a hunger for more. The rush of success fueled their ambition, pushing them to work harder and achieve more. They felt alive in a way that only success can make you feel. But as their wealth grew, so did their detachment. The intense drive that once propelled them forward begins to fade as they acquire more and more. Their desires become saturated. Their achievements no longer feel as meaningful. They become anesthetized to the thrill of success, no longer finding the same joy or fulfillment in their accomplishments. Wealth, once the symbol of success, becomes a source of spiritual numbness. The more one accumulates, the less one feels. The sense of urgency, the fire of ambition, and the hunger for achievement gradually dissipate. What was once a dynamic pursuit becomes a static reality. This phenomenon is not exclusive to the corporate world. It can happen in any realm of life where the pursuit of wealth becomes the ultimate goal. Take, for example, a famous actor or celebrity. At the height of their career, they are driven by the need for recognition, the desire to push boundaries, and the passion for their craft. However, as their wealth increases and the accolades pile up, they begin to lose touch with the very essence of their art. The joy of performing or creating is replaced by a sense of obligation, and the intoxication of success fades into a numbing routine. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche spoke of this distinction between the intoxicating nature of success and the numbing effects of wealth in his concept of the last man, a figure who has achieved material success but lacks any deeper purpose or drive. Nietzsche warned that the pursuit of comfort and wealth, while seemingly desirable, leads to a life devoid of passion, challenge, and meaning. The last man is satisfied with what he has, but in his satisfaction, he loses the spark of life itself. Success, in contrast, offers a sense of vitality, urgency, and growth. It's the relentless pursuit of something greater than oneself. Wealth, however, often comes with a sense of finality, a deadening effect on desire. While success inspires new heights, wealth can keep you grounded in a place where nothing new feels worth pursuing. The danger, then, is not in achieving wealth, but in allowing it to replace the very ambition that once fueled your journey. Every dollar you gain removes a piece of your innocence. In the beginning, wealth seems harmless, even noble. You earn your first dollars through effort and ambition, telling yourself it's for your family, your freedom, your future. But slowly something starts to change. With every dollar gained, new temptations creep in. New calculations replace old instincts. You begin to see the world not through the eyes of wonder, but through the lens of cost, gain, leverage, and survival. What was once pure curiosity becomes strategic networking. What was once generosity becomes a tax write-off. Innocence, once taken for granted, is traded silently for experience, and the experience is expensive. Consider a young artist who creates simply for the joy of expression. She shares her work with honesty, untouched by marketing or algorithms. But as money begins to flow in, her choices subtly shift. She wonders what will sell, what will trend, what her sponsors expect. The art remains, but now it is filtered through layers of performance, metrics, and profit. Each dollar comes with a choice, and each choice chips away at the unguarded freedom she once had. Fyodor Dostoevsky wrote, "Money is coined liberty," but he also understood its corruptive pull. The more you gain, the more you learn about what people truly value, and it's often not integrity, compassion, or truth, but influence, status, and utility. The world begins to show its darker rules, and in learning how to play, you start to lose the part of you that once refused to. With every financial success comes exposure to the behind-the-scenes transactions of power, and the quiet realization that to win, you must often play a little dirtier than before. Real-life scenarios abound. A startup founder who once spoke passionately about changing the world is forced to lay off loyal employees to appease shareholders. A philanthropist, once moved by empathy, now calculates donations based on optics and legacy. Even a child who inherits wealth begins to view friendships through a veil of suspicion. Do they like me or my money? The clarity of human connection, once simple, becomes blurred. In the end, the price of wealth is not written in numbers. It is written in the silent compromises, the lost nights of peace, the subtle hardening of the heart. Every dollar buys something, but it also sells something. And most of the time, what it sells is invisible, until one day, you look back and struggle to remember who you were before the world taught you its price. The richer you are, the more you'll pay to feel something real. Wealth offers access to almost anything, experiences, possessions, people. But what it often takes away is the ability to feel those things deeply. The richer you become, the more the world bends to your will. And yet, in that comfort, a strange numbness grows. The everyday wonders that once stirred your soul, laughter with friends, a quiet walk, the taste of a simple meal, begin to fade into the background. Everything is accessible, but very little is moving, and so begins the desperate, costly search for something that feels real. A billionaire might spend millions to chase adrenaline in a private spaceflight or retreat to a silent monastery in the Himalayas, hoping to recover the peace that once came for free. Another may hire therapists, shamans, or artists to help them reconnect with the sense of meaning that wealth has quietly eroded. Ironically, the more resources you have, the harder it becomes to find experiences that aren't tainted by performance, flattery, or control. Even love becomes suspicious. Is it genuine, or is it bought? Philosopher Erich Fromm warned of this condition in his work To Have or To Be, suggesting that the modern obsession with possession strips life of authentic being. The wealthy accumulate not only things, but curated realities, filtered, managed, and often hollow. In response, they escalate the cost and intensity of their experiences. But no matter how luxurious the hotel, how exotic the destination, or how rare the art, it often fails to move them the way poverty once did with a simple sunset or an honest conversation. This paradox plays out in high society. Celebrities, athletes, and elites speak openly of emptiness. Despite being surrounded by luxury, they chase authenticity through extreme sports, hallucinogens, or spiritual retreats. They pay for what the average person might stumble upon freely: vulnerability, wonder, awe. The realness they crave now comes with a price tag, and even then, it's not guaranteed. The curse of wealth is that it dulls the senses it once promised to excite. With every upgrade, the bar for fulfillment rises. Eventually, even the extraordinary feels mundane. And so the rich keep spending, not to indulge, but to remember what it felt like to feel alive, before everything could be bought and nothing could be trusted. Poverty shows you the cruelty of others. Wealth reveals your own. Poverty strips away illusions. When you have little, you see how easily the world turns its back. You notice the averted eyes, the doors that never open, the warmth that only flows toward those who can offer something in return. People treat you not as a human being, but as a burden, a statistic, a shadow to be ignored. In hardship, the cruelty of others becomes undeniable. Their indifference, their judgment, their willingness to let you suffer as long as their own comfort remains untouched. But wealth exposes a different kind of cruelty, your own. When you rise out of scarcity and into abundance, the world changes its tone. Suddenly people listen, accommodate, and flatter. You're no longer invisible but important. And in this shift, something darker begins to emerge, a creeping sense of superiority. You begin to believe you deserve better treatment, that your success is proof of your worth. The same struggles you once faced, you now view with distant skepticism. You forget the hunger, the fear, the loneliness. You start to believe the poor are poor because they didn't try hard enough. Wealth does not make people cruel. It simply reveals the cruelty that comfort allows to surface. When you no longer need to beg for empathy, it's easy to stop offering it. When your world is curated to keep discomfort out, luxury homes, gated communities, private jets, you lose touch with the pain of others. And without that connection, your own coldness grows unnoticed. In The Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky wrote, "The degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons." What he meant is that how we treat the powerless, not when we are weak, but when we are strong, defines who we really are. The same man who once wept at being ignored now scrolls past the homeless with glassy indifference. The woman who once pleaded for a chance now withholds opportunity from those she deems unworthy. This is the quiet corruption of the soul wealth can bring. Poverty makes you vulnerable to the cruelty of the world, but wealth tempts you to become the very thing you once hated. And unless you guard your heart carefully, you may not even notice when the shift occurs, only that you've become harder, colder, and more distant from the pain that once defined you. Wealth is gained by manipulating reality, and then resented for its falseness. To become wealthy in today's world often requires a bending of reality, not always through deception in the criminal sense, but through the careful shaping of perception, branding, narrative, timing, and psychological leverage. Businesses don't just sell products, they sell desires. Influencers don't just live lives, they curate illusions. Entrepreneurs don't just solve problems, they construct needs. Success becomes a game of optics. Who can present the most convincing version of truth, even if it only loosely resembles reality? The paradox is that those who master this illusion often end up trapped within it. Consider a self-made mogul who builds his empire on a compelling personal story, a rags-to-riches tale polished for maximum impact. Over time, the story becomes more myth than memory, more marketing than truth. He finds that people love the image, not the man. Every room he walks into, he's treated as a brand, not a being. And when he tries to speak honestly, to be seen without the costume of success, the world recoils. They don't want the real him. They want the version that sold so well. The philosopher Jean Baudrillard warned of this in his theory of hyper-reality, a state where simulations of reality become more real than the reality itself. Wealth, especially in modern capitalism, thrives in hyper-reality. Luxury brands don't sell fabric, they sell status. Tech billionaires don't sell code, they sell visions of the future. And once immersed in this world, it becomes harder to tell what's authentic and what's just performance. Eventually, the illusion becomes suffocating. The wealthy begin to resent the artificiality they've created, the friends who smile too easily, the deals built on pretense, the social circles where everyone is calculating something. Behind the veil of luxury lies an aching question. What is real? They long for sincerity but are surrounded by rehearsed smiles. They crave connection but attract opportunism. The very reality they manipulated to climb now feels inescapable and fake. In the pursuit of wealth, reality is twisted to fit ambition. But in the end, that distorted world becomes a mirror, reflecting back not truth, but the echo of something lost. And the higher you rise within that illusion, the harder it becomes to touch anything real again. The market rewards efficiency, not humanity. In the cold arithmetic of capitalism, efficiency is king. The faster you produce, the cheaper you operate, the more you scale, the greater your reward. The system doesn't pause to ask how you got there, only how much you delivered. In this landscape, humanity becomes a liability. Empathy slows decisions, ethics increase costs, and relationships are replaced by transactions. The market is not a moral force, it's a machine, and machines do not feel. This is why a company that automates thousands of jobs is praised for innovation, even as it quietly devastates entire communities. It's why the most profitable businesses often rely on exploited labor, invasive data mining, or mental manipulation, not because they're evil, but because they're efficient. In the relentless pursuit of output, the human soul becomes collateral damage. A startup founder might begin with noble goals to help people, to change lives, but investors won't wait for idealism to pay off. They demand growth, margins, speed, so the founder compromises. They cut staff to preserve runway, outsource to cheaper labor overseas, push addictive features to boost engagement. Every decision makes the product more successful and less humane. The philosopher Hannah Arendt warned of this in her analysis of bureaucracies, where individuals become cogs in systems that no longer recognize human values. In modern markets, it's the same dynamic. People become data points, behaviors become commodities, and morality is too slow to matter. The most successful players often feel the least, not because they're monsters, but because feeling gets in the way. Take the example of social media algorithms. These tools are brilliantly efficient at keeping users engaged, not by serving truth or beauty, but by feeding outrage, insecurity, and tribalism. Why? Because that's what keeps people scrolling. The algorithm doesn't ask if it's good for you, only if it works, and the market rewards it with billions. Over time, this efficiency erodes everything it touches. Relationships, mental health, attention spans, even democracy. What's left is a world optimized for profit, but stripped of warmth. And those who try to lead with empathy often find themselves outcompeted, underfunded, or discarded. In the end, the market doesn't care if you are kind, honest, or just. It only cares if you deliver. And if you're not careful, you may become everything the system rewards, and nothing your soul can recognize. Luxury dulls the senses it claims to satisfy. Luxury promises elevation. It seduces with texture, flavor, softness, and precision, a life refined to the point of perfection. But the paradox is that the more you indulge in luxury, the more it numbs the very senses it was meant to awaken. The silk sheets, the gourmet meals, the exclusive vacations. At first, they dazzle. Eventually, they fade, not because they change, but because you do. The senses, like muscles, weaken without resistance. Pleasure becomes the new normal, and what once thrilled now barely registers. Imagine someone tasting caviar for the first time. There is intrigue, maybe even awe. But When caviar becomes Tuesday's snack, it ceases to move you. The same happens with five-star hotels, designer clothing, or luxury cars. Their impact depends on contrast, and when your life becomes a seamless stream of upgrades, there is no contrast left. You're no longer amazed, you're numb, and to feel again, you must go higher, rarer, more extreme. The luxury you sought to satisfy your senses now demands more just to maintain a flicker of joy. This is the diminishing return of decadence. It's not just economic, it's psychological. Neuroscience confirms that our brains adapt to repeated pleasure through a process called hedonic adaptation. The more stimulation we get, the less responsive we become. This is why billionaires buy islands and collectors obsess over owning the only one of something. It's not about the object. It's about chasing a feeling that's already slipping away. Philosopher Epicurus warned against this. He believed pleasure was found not in abundance, but in simplicity, in learning to desire less. The rich, he argued, often misunderstand happiness. They believe it is found in acquisition, but it is more often destroyed by it. True satisfaction, he insisted, comes from the absence of pain, not the overstimulation of the senses. We see this in real life. Celebrities who spiral into addiction not because they lacked anything, but because they felt nothing. Heirs to fortunes who live behind walls of luxury but feel empty, isolated, and dull. The irony is brutal. In seeking to feel more, they end up feeling less. Luxury promises sensation, but over time, it starves you of it. And the person who once sought beauty, pleasure, and joy becomes someone who cannot feel them, no matter how much they spend. Money can silence criticism, but cannot buy love. Money has the strange power to shape perception. It can shut mouths, win applause, and manufacture admiration. With wealth, you can hire the best PR teams, erase scandals, and surround yourself with people who nod when you speak. It buys a form of silence, not the peaceful kind, but the pressured kind. The kind where people stop being honest because it no longer serves them. But while money can mute dissent, it cannot evoke true affection. It cannot make someone love you, not with the raw, unfiltered honesty that love demands. Consider the billionaire whose success has made him untouchable. He's praised in public, protected in courtrooms, celebrated in the media. But in his private life, he senses the absence of warmth. He hosts dinners in mansions filled with guests, but the laughter feels distant. He receives admiration, but never intimacy, because deep down, he knows that many of those around him are drawn to his power, not his person. He is desired, but not known. And so, he lives with the constant suspicion that if the money vanished, so would they. Love, by its nature, cannot be bought. It is given freely or not at all. The moment it becomes transactional, it begins to rot. You can pay someone to stay, to smile, even to say, "I love you," but you cannot pay them to mean it. Love requires vulnerability, not leverage. It grows in mutual sacrifice, not in negotiation. This is why some of the wealthiest people in the world feel the loneliest. They are surrounded, but not seen. Philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Love is all, it gives all, and it takes all. It cannot be faked or forced." And the tragedy of the rich is that in shielding themselves from rejection with money, they also shield themselves from genuine connection. They build fortresses so thick with luxury that love cannot enter, only flattery. Real love comes when someone chooses you without gain, when they stay not because of what you offer, but who you are. And no matter how vast your fortune, that kind of love remains beyond purchase. It must be earned with truth, not wealth, and for those who try to replace one with the other, the result is always the same. Admiration without intimacy, company without closeness, a life that is full but unloved. Wealth can give you power over others, but not power over yourself. Wealth is often equated with power, and in many ways it is. With money you can bend rules, buy influence, and command attention. Doors open, people obey, entire systems revolve around the gravity of your wealth. But while riches can grant you control over the external world, they do little to tame the internal one. You can own land, businesses, even people's time, but none of that guarantees mastery over your impulses, your fears, or your desires. Power over others is seductive because it offers the illusion of completeness. A wealthy person may believe that because they can shape the world around them, they must also be in control of themselves. But this is rarely true. In fact, wealth often amplifies the lack of self-control. The man who once disciplined his habits to build success now indulges in every craving. The woman who once rose through sacrifice now finds herself drowning in excess. With no resistance, the self slowly dissolves. Take the celebrity who spirals into addiction. Their money protects them from consequences. Lawyers, handlers, and doctors clean up the mess, but no one can confront the emptiness inside. Or the tycoon who commands thousands of employees but can't sit alone for 10 minutes without anxiety. These are not anomalies. They are reflections of a truth. Power over the world does not equal power over the self. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus distinguished between the things we can control, our thoughts, judgments, and actions, and the things we cannot. Wealth, he would argue, belongs to the latter. It is external. The internal world, the self, is governed by discipline, self-knowledge, and restraint. And ironically, the more we rely on external power, the more disconnected we often become from internal strength. This is the tragedy of the powerful. They can dominate nations, shape markets, and silence critics, yet still fall victim to jealousy, insecurity, addiction, or rage. Their empires are mighty, but their inner world is fragile, ungoverned. True power is quiet. It is found in self-restraint, in the ability to walk away, to be still, to choose what is right over what is easy. And this kind of power cannot be bought. It must be earned. Wealth may lift you above others, but only wisdom lifts you above yourself. Those who seek riches out of emptiness only find a bigger void. There is a hunger that wealth cannot feed. It begins quietly, as a sense of lack, a feeling that something is missing. Some call it ambition, others call it drive, but beneath the surface it's often a deeper wound, a desperate attempt to prove one's worth, to silence inner doubt, to escape pain through accumulation. The pursuit of riches, when rooted in emptiness, does not heal. It magnifies the void. A man who grows up feeling invisible may chase success to be seen. He works obsessively, builds empires, surrounds himself with admiration. Yet, in moments of silence, the emptiness returns. The applause never lasts. Wealth never says, "You are enough." Because the problem was never a lack of gold, it was a lack of self, and money, for all its power, cannot construct identity. It can decorate the cage, but not free the prisoner. This is the illusion of material salvation, that if we just earn enough, buy enough, build enough, the ache inside will disappear. But the void is not filled by external gain. In fact, the more we pour into it, the deeper it seems to grow. The luxury car that once thrilled me now feels ordinary. The mansion becomes a shell. The bank account grows, but so does the disconnection, because the quest began from the wrong place, not from vision, but from pain. Philosopher Erich Fromm distinguished between having and being. He warned that modern society encourages people to define themselves by what they have, not who they are. But when the inner self is hollow, all the having in the world cannot make you whole. To chase riches from a place of brokenness is to drink salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. Look at the lives of many who have it all: fame, power, money, and yet they implode under the weight of it. Because wealth magnifies what's inside, if there is emptiness, it becomes more visible. If there is pain, it echoes louder. The external world cannot repair what the internal world refuses to face. The only real answer is to turn inward, to sit with the ache, to understand its origin, to build from a place of truth, not fear. Without that, riches are not a solution. They are an amplifier, and those who seek them to escape the void only find themselves lost in a bigger one. Wealth isolates the soul while connecting the body to pleasures. Wealth can grant the body everything it desires: warmth, taste, comfort, touch. With enough money, every physical craving can be fulfilled instantly. A private chef for your hunger, a masseuse for your tension, first-class flights for your fatigue. The body becomes pampered, perfected, indulged, but as the body becomes more gratified, the soul often drifts into deeper solitude, because comfort and meaning are not the same, and pleasures of the flesh do not nourish the inner self. When life becomes a pursuit of sensation, something inside begins to starve. The pleasures that once excited now feel routine. The soul, that quiet yearning part of us, is silenced beneath the noise of indulgence. You can spend a week in a 5-star resort, surrounded by beauty and service, and still feel profoundly empty at night, because meaning is not delivered to your door like room service. It must be searched for, earned through struggle, vulnerability, and connection, none of which can be bought. This is the cruel trade-off of wealth when misused. You are surrounded by people, yet often alone. Everyone smiles, but few speak the truth. Your body is in paradise, but your soul is exiled. It's a dynamic echoed in the lives of the ultra-rich, celebrities with fleets of cars and empty bedrooms, CEOs with yachts but no one to trust. They connect with the world through desire, but not through depth. Philosopher Thomas Merton once said, "People may spend their whole lives climbing the ladder of success only to find, once they reach the top, that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall." Pleasure is a wall, smooth, impressive, but hollow, and once you've scaled it, you see what was sacrificed: authenticity, struggle, real companionship, and inner quiet. A man who eats alone in his mansion with a gourmet meal may be physically satisfied, but spiritually starved. He no longer remembers the taste of hunger, the joy of sharing a meal, the laughter of a humble table. His body is connected, wired to luxury, while his soul floats somewhere far behind, unacknowledged, untouched. In the end, wealth offers access to every pleasure, but if it becomes the center of your life, it disconnects you from yourself. It satisfies your skin while slowly severing your spirit, and that is the loneliest kind of abundance. Riches grant you entry into every room except the one where you are truly needed. Money can open doors that remained closed to most. It buys invitations to elite gatherings, access to powerful networks, and seats at the most exclusive tables. With wealth, you can enter rooms where decisions are made, influence is brokered, and futures are shaped. Yet the cruel irony is that no amount of riches can grant you entry into the one room that truly matters, the space where your presence is genuinely needed, valued, and irreplaceable. This room is not a boardroom or a gala. It is the intimate chamber of human connection, where your true self is welcomed, not your status or bank balance. It is where your family waits for your attention, where your friends need your honesty, where your community seeks your authenticity. The room where love, trust, and meaning reside cannot be bought or rented. It demands vulnerability, time, and sacrifice, currencies no fortune can purchase. Consider the billionaire who, despite commanding immense power, finds himself a stranger at his own dinner table. His children crave his presence, not his gifts. His closest relationships fray under the weight of absence and superficiality. In public, he is admired and envied. In private, he is invisible. The riches that gained him access to countless social spheres fail to bridge the emotional distance from those who need him most. This paradox echoes the warning from existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, who emphasized that true being arises only through authentic relationships. No social status or material possession can substitute for the sincere human encounter where one is seen, understood, and accepted for who they are, flaws and all. History is filled with examples of great wealth paired with profound loneliness. The entertainer whose mansion is filled with acquaintances but empty of friends. The magnate who surrounds himself with advisors and sycophants but lacks a confidant. They can navigate every social circuit but remain barred from the sanctuary of genuine belonging. Money turns necessities into commodities and people into transactions. At its core, money is a tool, a medium of exchange designed to simplify the trade of goods and services. But as wealth grows, this tool often distorts our fundamental human experiences, transforming essential needs into mere commodities and reducing relationships to calculated transactions. The warmth of human connection becomes negotiable. The care that once felt unconditional begins to feel like a price tag. What was once intimate and sacred is flattened into exchange and utility. Take the example of healthcare. When money dominates the system, healing becomes a product to be bought and sold rather than a universal right. A person's pain or suffering is measured against their ability to pay. A life-saving operation turns into a business deal. The doctor-patient relationship shifts from empathy and trust to billing codes and insurance claims. The necessity of health, something that should unite us in compassion, becomes a cold transaction, often leaving the vulnerable behind. Similarly, consider friendships or family ties entangled in financial expectation. When money enters the equation, favors and kindness can morph into debts and obligations. A parent's support, a friend's loyalty, these can become contingent on financial exchange, undermining the very foundation of trust. The generosity that once defined human bonds is shadowed by calculation. People become means to an end rather than ends in themselves. This commodification extends into the workplace, where employees are often treated as cogs rather than individuals. Their labor is a transaction, hours exchanged for wages. The human need for purpose, recognition, and dignity is often sacrificed at the altar of productivity and profit. The workplace can become a marketplace of utility, where the richness of personal identity is compressed into output metrics and dollar values. Philosopher Karl Marx famously critiqued this phenomenon, calling it commodity fetishism, the idea that social relationships become mediated by objects and money, obscuring the human connections beneath. He warned that when everything is reduced to a commodity, society risks losing sight of the human dignity that should underlie all exchange. In real life, this paradox manifests painfully. The richer the society becomes, the more intimate aspects of life, care, love, identity, risk being bought, sold, or sacrificed for profit. And in this transactional world, the true value of human connection often fades into the background noise of commerce, leaving us isolated in a marketplace where everything, including ourselves, carries a price. Ultimately, riches buy access to countless spaces, but never the one where your soul is heard and needed. That room requires something money cannot give: presence. And without it, all the invitations in the world become meaningless echoes in a hollow life. The more you have, the more you worry about what you cannot control. Accumulating wealth often feels like a path to security, the belief that with enough possessions you can protect yourself from chaos, uncertainty, and loss. Yet paradoxically, the greater your material abundance, the more you become consumed by the anxiety of losing what you have. The very things you think will give you peace instead breed a deeper, more relentless fear. This is the burden of having much. The horizon of what is uncontrollable expands alongside your fortune. Imagine a wealthy entrepreneur who built a vast empire. Every asset, properties, investments, luxury goods, requires vigilance. Each one is a node of potential risk: market crashes, theft, lawsuits, betrayal. Unlike the simplicity of a life with less, where concerns might be limited to daily survival, the affluent find themselves trapped in a web of contingencies. They obsess over taxes, security systems, reputations, and legal protections. The list of what could go wrong grows as their portfolio grows, creating an invisible prison made of what must be managed and guarded. This anxiety is not just practical, but deeply psychological. Philosopher Epictetus taught that peace comes from distinguishing between what we can control and what we cannot. Yet, wealth tempts us into believing we can control everything, until reality proves otherwise. No amount of money can guarantee health, loyalty, or time. The stock market can crash, allies can betray, illness can strike, and each loss or threat feels amplified because the stakes are so high. Consider also the paradox of luxury lifestyles where every comfort is paired with increased vulnerability. A mansion demands staff, security, maintenance. A private jet needs pilots and upkeep. The richer you are, the more dependencies you create, and with those dependencies come risks beyond your command. Wealth intended to protect, ironically multiplies the sources of worry. In contrast, a simpler life with fewer possessions and obligations naturally limits exposure to uncontrollable factors. The fewer the possessions, the fewer the potential losses. The less you own, the more you can accept the unpredictability of life. Ultimately, the richer you become, the more you realize that control is always an illusion. Possessions magnify your awareness of what lies beyond your grasp. And this realization, unsettling yet profound, forces a choice: continue chasing control through accumulation, or accept uncertainty as the true constant. In this tension lies the heavy paradox of wealth. Wealth lets you travel the world, but never guarantees you arrive anywhere. Money can buy passage to the farthest corners of the earth. It grants access to first-class flights, luxury hotels, and exclusive experiences that many only dream of. With wealth, you can witness the grandeur of the Taj Mahal, the serenity of the Japanese countryside, or the vibrant chaos of New York City, all in a single year. Yet, despite the ability to move endlessly across geographies, wealth does not promise arrival at a deeper destination, purpose, meaning, or self-understanding. The paradox is stark. The rich traveler may circle the globe endlessly but remain lost within themselves. The map they follow is external, a checklist of places and experiences, but the inner compass that points toward fulfillment is often missing or ignored. Without that inner guide, all the journeys become mere distractions, an attempt to outrun restlessness or numb dissatisfaction. Consider the story of a billionaire who, despite visiting every continent, confesses a profound loneliness and emptiness. The exotic landscapes become backdrops for isolation rather than discovery. The thrill of novelty fades quickly, leaving behind only the hollow echo of movement without arrival. The richness of places is overshadowed by the poverty of internal connection. Philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard remind us that true arrival is not about physical destinations, but existential ones. Life's journey is inward, a passage toward authenticity and self-realization. Wealth may accelerate movement, but it cannot substitute the slow, often painful process of becoming oneself. The risk is that endless travel becomes an escape from confronting one's inner world rather than a path to understanding it. In everyday life, this is seen when people pursue career success or material gain as if these will finally bring satisfaction. They climb ladders, cross borders, accumulate titles, but feel no closer to a sense of belonging or peace. The external journey becomes a cycle of avoidance, never breaking through to arrival. Ultimately, wealth can open the world's doors but cannot guarantee that you will find the place where you truly belong. Without reflection and inner work, the miles traveled only deepen the distance from yourself, making the vastness of the world a mirror for the emptiness within. To desire wealth is to desire chains made of gold. The pursuit of wealth is often portrayed as the ultimate freedom, the promise that money will liberate us from want, limitation, and dependence. Yet beneath this alluring surface lies a paradox as old as civilization itself. To desire wealth is to willingly bind yourself with chains made of gold. Those chains may glitter and dazzle, but they are chains nonetheless, restraining rather than freeing the soul. When you fixate on accumulating riches, you enter a world ruled by endless demands and expectations. Each acquisition invites new obligations. A luxury car requires maintenance and security. A vast estate demands caretakers and management. Investments call for vigilance and risk calculation. The golden chains are forged from the very possessions and status symbols you covet. The more you grasp, the heavier the burden becomes. Consider the businessman who achieves extraordinary success and wealth. With each new achievement, he gains influence but loses peace of mind. His days become consumed by meetings, deals, and managing his empire. He cannot simply walk away or rest because his fortune depends on constant attention and growth. The freedom he sought in wealth dissolves into a prison of responsibility, expectations, and fear of loss. The golden bars gleam, but they enclose him like iron. The philosopher Epictetus taught that true freedom comes from mastering one's desires, not fulfilling them blindly. When desire controls you, it enslaves you. Wealth as an object of desire seduces with the illusion of liberty, but tightens the bonds of dependence on external things. The chains are not visible, but they manifest as anxiety, distraction, and the loss of inner calm. This paradox is visible in the lives of many who have made it, celebrities, moguls, and heirs, who speak of feeling trapped by their wealth. They are watched, envied, and expected to perform. To sustain their lifestyle and image, the golden chains become a social cage. Ultimately, to desire wealth without understanding its cost is to ask for bondage wrapped in brilliance. The true question is not how much you can gain, but how much you are willing to lose of freedom, peace, and authenticity. In the pursuit of gold, the price of riches is often freedom itself, disguised in shimmering chains. Money makes life easier and meaning harder. Money's power to simplify life is undeniable. It removes barriers, solves problems, and smooths daily inconveniences. With enough wealth, you can hire help for chores, avoid uncomfortable work, and access the best healthcare and education. The practical burdens of survival lessen, and life's material demands become easier to bear. Yet, this very ease often obscures and complicates the deeper search for meaning. The more effortless life becomes on the surface, the harder it can be to find purpose beneath it. When survival is no longer a struggle, the necessity to confront life's fundamental questions often fades into the background. For most, meaning is forged through adversity, effort, and sacrifice, the very conditions that money can alleviate, Without these challenges, the soul can drift in a fog of complacency, distracted by comfort and convenience. The simple raw experiences that once forced reflection, loss, hardship, uncertainty, get muted by the cushion of wealth. Consider a wealthy heir who grows up insulated from struggle. Their days are filled with abundance, but empty of challenge. They may own expensive cars, travel the world, and enjoy every luxury, yet they find themselves lost, unsure why they feel hollow. Their life is easy, but their purpose is elusive. In contrast, someone living with less material ease often develops resilience and perspective through hardship, nurturing a more vivid sense of self and meaning. Philosopher Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, argued that meaning is not found in comfort, but in the willingness to suffer and face life's pain with courage. His work shows that purpose is often born in response to struggle rather than avoidance of it. Money, by removing struggle, can paradoxically remove these opportunities for profound growth. In practical terms, the ease money provides can become a trap of distraction. Constant entertainment, luxury purchases, and social validation can numb the existential questions rather than answer them. Wealth becomes a veil that hides the silent, persistent question of, "Why am I here?" behind layers of pleasure and ease. Thus, money makes life easier in practical terms, but harder in the deepest sense. It clears the path, yet clouds the horizon. The challenge is not only to use wealth to solve problems, but to resist its seduction of complacency, to seek meaning even when life feels easy, and to remember that true fulfillment demands more than comfort. You can afford the best doctors, but not eternal health. Money can buy access to the finest medical care the world has to offer. It opens doors to top specialists, cutting-edge treatments, and luxurious recovery facilities. With wealth, you can command faster diagnoses, experimental therapies, and personalized attention that most can only dream of. Yet despite this unparalleled access, the ultimate prize, eternal health, remains forever out of reach. No fortune can rewrite the fundamental truth of human mortality. This paradox is painfully clear when observing the lives of the ultra-wealthy who battle chronic illnesses or terminal diagnoses. They may spend millions on specialists, second opinions, and experimental drugs, but the fragile body still deteriorates, aging and vulnerability persist. The finest doctors can extend life, ease pain, or delay decline, but they cannot grant immortality or permanent vitality. The biological limits of the human condition remain steadfast, indifferent to the size of one's bank account. Consider the tragic case of a billionaire who, despite investing heavily in longevity science and private clinics, faces the same existential reality as the poorest person on the street: the inevitability of sickness and death. Their wealth offers comfort and options, but not escape from the finality of the body's decline. This truth humbles even the richest among us, revealing the limits of money's power. Philosophers from ancient times, like Marcus Aurelius, reminded us that death is a natural part of life, something no human can avoid or outsmart. Wealth might ease the journey, but cannot alter the destination. It forces a confrontation with the fact that health is not a commodity to be bought, but a fragile balance maintained by forces beyond currency. This reality often forces a deeper reckoning. The pursuit of health through wealth can become a metaphor for the human struggle against impermanence and the desire to control the uncontrollable. It exposes a universal vulnerability that no matter how much we possess, the body remains a mortal vessel. In everyday life, this paradox reminds us that while money can ease suffering and buy time, it cannot grant the ultimate gift of eternal health. It invites reflection on what truly matters: the quality of the time we have, not its indefinite extension. The richest doctor cannot cure the human condition itself, and this humbling truth lies at the heart of our shared mortality.